Hello and welcome back to the channel. Okay, so in this video I want to show how easily you can set up your own tools here, essentially your own local MCP that you can use in Claude or any other LLM really. So here's a really simple example. It will take a YouTube transcript or YouTube video, get the ID, get that into a transcript, and then generate some tweets that it can use to send off to Typefully. So if I was to get a video, I think I have one copy. I want it to appear into Typefully just here. So I'll come back to Claude and say, create a thread tweets from this video. Yeah, so first it's going to ask if it can use the tool here so you can see what it's passing in. So we'll say allow once. And once it's got the transcript, it's going to create a tweet. So this part here isn't really doing anything special. It's just essentially creating a prompt based on that context. And now once it's got that tweet, actually I wonder if it's going to do it all automatically. We might have to tell it to now send this draft to Typefully. So ideally it would do that all in one action, but let's see. So here we go, it's got all the information here. Allow once. There we go. So that's been scheduled. So in this first one, yeah. So I wonder if I adjusted that prompt and asked it to send it to Typefully, if it would do everything. But let's just see. Let's come into here. There it is. So you can see that has appeared. So if we test it again, but this time I'm going to adjust my prompt and say, send the draft to Typefully. So we'll start that in a new chat. So again, it's going to get the transcript. Should probably add some caching there. Now it's going to create the prompt. And send it to Typefully. There we go. So if we come back now over to Typefully, we should see, yep, here it is. So there's a few issues here with just it being aware of the limits and things like that, which we can adjust in the prompt and add even to the Typefully helper itself. We can fix that. So to start with, let's go through. So I'll share a link to the full source code of this. But to start with, let's just look at the manifest or the package.json so we can see how this all breaks down. The main dependency here is the Model Context Protocol SDK, and then we have a few others based on what we need to do. So in the actual source here, we then have a couple of environment variables. Now this could either be stored in it like this, or I'll show you in a moment the actual way we add this to Claude. We could have them there as well. So in our source, we just have our actual MCP server here, and then we have our services. This is where we have each of the different parts of those tools that we saw. So again, these could be used within something like Claude, or you could have it on your own hosted, service somewhere, and you can run it directly from there. You don't have to have it, locally on Claude or something. This could be used anywhere. So if we go step by step, so the first one is the YouTube service. Now this uses the SuperData API to take a video ID and turn it into a transcript. This is where we get all the context essentially of what the video is about. So if we see just here, this part here really is just normal TypeScript. There's nothing specifically MCP related about this really. It's just taking in, we're using some regex here to grab the video ID from different types of YouTube URLs, and we then just basically have an API call to grab that, and then we just put it all in one place so we can use it. The same for Typefully. This just uses the Typefully API, using the normal docs to create a draft with the specific information that we want here. And you could really have all of this customizable. We'll have a look at the MCP part in a moment, but it could all be customizable from there. We just send it to drafts. So yeah, that's how these parts connect up. And then the tweet generation part, this is a little bit different. This is just to give it some extra context. So say I put in my original prompt that I wanted it to be, you know, a tweet thread of a certain type. This helps to like prompt it along those lines. So all of this really does is return a prompt that we can then use for, you know, creating a tweet. So this could either be a single tweet or a thread. So first we're setting up our server. We're importing that from the Model Context Protocol SDK. Same just here and here. So we've got our types. Then we're pulling in our different services and the other like libraries that we need. This one here is more just because I wanted to keep my environment variables inside the folder. But we'll take a look in a moment of how you can actually set that up within Claude JSON directly. So that would remove all of these really. So yeah, that simplified it quite a lot. Then we set up our different services. So we've got our YouTube service, our tweet generation, and Typefully. We create our server. You could name this anything really. Then we set up some validation so that we know exactly what schema that is going to be expected in each of these functions. So the YouTube one, for example, just expects a video URL that's a string. And then the same for generate tweets. We're expecting a transcript, a prompt, how many tweets, a style, this is optional, or this is optional as well, and then the format. And we also have one for sending tweets. So this is, you know, the actual tweets, and then the position of the tweets in there. Again, that's optional. So once we have that, we know exactly what type of format that everything should be in. Once we have that, we can then set up our tools. So again, this is very, very similar. So we have our tool name, which corresponds to a function further down. Then we have a description so that the LLM knows what this tool is about, what it can be used for. And then we have our schema here, and then the same for the next one, and the next one, and the next one. So that's all of the tools. And then down here, depending on which tool is used, we need to actually be able to perform a task. So this basically just waits for each of those tools. So it's just a switch case here of the different types that we have, along with the parameters that have been passed into it. So this part here is essentially coming straight from the LLM is asking it to perform this action, and then it just runs it. So this here could be anything really, depending on what we've set up here. So once it gets into this, we then look through each of our actual functions. So we know here, this is the tool that we want to run, and this is the arguments that we have. So this is where we're getting the parameters and validating that it's actually in the correct format. So we then can actually send it straight to the action. So our YouTube service is made up of those different functions that we showed. This could all be in one place really. But first we grab the ID from the URL, then we convert that into a transcript. Then we take that transcript, because originally it comes back with timestamps. We don't need that just here. We just want it in one string, so that's what we take just here. And then we basically return that in a format which has a little bit more context. So we have the, we grab the transcript, the video ID, the language, and then we have a little preview here of the information. So that is then returned. You can now use this to generate tweets, and we actually say the name of the tool. So it can help with that whole, I suppose you can call it like an agentic loop of what tasks to perform next. So now we can look at the next one. Very, very similar to what we just saw. So this is first getting the arguments and validating that schema against that. So we have these different variables available now. And then we just passed all of that into get tweet context. We have our context now. And you can see here, we just do a little bit more checks to make sure that it's in the correct format. And then, yeah, we return that back. And now once we have everything ideally in place, this just takes in the tweets. So we validate that we have the correct format for our tweets. We go through and convert these into a nicer format. This is where we saw the issue originally where it wasn't in the correct type. So we could add limits here per tweet to know, trim this to the correct size for an actual tweet. This is just an example. So now we have our draft that's created. We then send it back and say that the draft was successfully created. So that essentially is how it all links together. I have a README included in here as well, so you can see exactly how to get started. You just clone this, install it, run build so that you've got the actual files. And then down here, I think I have information on how you can actually use it. So yeah, in your Claude desktop config, you'll open up your file. If you go to the Claude settings and go to developer, you can see all of your custom MCP, the same as everywhere else would go. Click edit config and I'll show you where the file is, like this. So all you would need to do is just add this in here and make sure that you have the correct path. So what you'll notice in here is there's no or a distribution folder. So as soon as you run build and get that, you'll be able to have everything appear, as you would expect. And you could also pass your environment variables here, like I mentioned, rather than having to, have those in the env file, which I have an example file here, but you need to create one of those as well. So if you have that all in that JSON file, it streamlines it a little bit because you won't need to have, all of this. Just here, that can all go. And you can even remove those dependencies from the package.json file as well. So that's a little bit of a tangent there. But what this brings me on to next is there's quite a lot of steps. Say you did want to take this exact MCP and run it locally, you would have to make sure that you go through all of the steps correctly there to build it, to add your information, and then link it into Claude Desktop. One thing that Claude has just released is a way to package these up, essentially like Chrome extensions. They'll have a manifest file. You can make sure all of the information is included in there, so that all the user has to do is either double click what will be a .dxt file, or they can find them. There's a preview amount of extensions here, but there's going to be a lot more coming, and almost like a store, I suppose, of MCPs you can install. So I'm going to do a video on that next, where you can actually see how to convert this MCP that we've built into an extension that you can just drag into here or double click and add that into Claude Desktop. So thanks for watching. If you've got any questions on this, please do let me know, leave a comment below. But I'll start recording that next video now so you can see how you can build these into extensions.